We are live. Bye, baby. Safe travels. The wife is leaving. We are live. Welcome to SohoMD Live. I'm Dr. Ratush, and with me will be Dr. Welge when he jumps on, and we are doing a program now for a few weeks called Addicted Kids, Concerned Parents. And that's what the program's about. So welcome to Addicted Kids, Concerned Parents. Welge is going to jump on, I'm sure. And if not, I'll just do it on my own if that's what I have to do. I'm not sure what that would be, since this is intended to be an open format where the people that join get to participate if they want. Ask a question and get an answer is the idea. But the topic is addiction, harm reduction as a theme, and how much should a parent know? How much should a parent participate in the intervention? What is an intervention? And I don't even mean like the classic term intervention. Oh, we need to sit down and tell a person that they need to go to rehab. But I mean intervention as anything you do to intervene at any one point. Because it's not completely clear what things are the right things to do and the wrong things to do. It's interesting. I feel like I'm the only one on and no one else is. I wonder if that was intended. Maybe so. Today might not even be a day where we're supposed to be doing this. We might have taken a break for 2 weeks and I didn't get the memo. But I guess it allows me to, all right. Hey, Wilson. I like when people join. It allows me to maybe share some thoughts that I've been thinking about. Well, I had this one thought about the body, and I don't know if anyone's ever come across this piece of information, but you know, most of the body is dies and cells get regenerated, and so it's the red blood cell that is. Hi.
Hi, Dr. Ratush. How are you?
How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
I was wondering if I'm just like in this all on my own today, or if we're doing this.
Yeah, no, I think Dr. Welge was reaching out. He wasn't able to see the live icon, so I'm not sure if he has logged on just yet.
There he is. Yeah. So, but I started on a thought. You know, have you ever heard the idea that, you know, like all our cells regenerate? And the cells that seem to live the longest in our bodies. Hey, Dr. Welge.
Dr. Welge.
Hello.
I wasn't sure everybody's coming on. I thought, and so it kind of threw me for a loop. And then I was searching for a thought, and then I had a thought. So I'm sharing my thought. So, Dr. Welge, like you came up this, like, is this accurate that the longest living cells in our bodies are red blood cells, and all the other cells like die and get, you know, remade?
That's a very good question. I know that I know the red blood cells last 120 days.
Right.
I don't know if that's the longest.
Right. I think that's so. The way I remember it is that that's the longest. And so in a way, what that suggests is that every 120 days, every single cell in your body is a different cell.
That's
So
fascinating.
you're actually a different person every 4 months.
Wow.
That's why, you know, I think that's where some of the theories about habit change and habit formation come from. Or at least that's a very compelling narrative to get someone to envision and work with psychologically. I like it personally. I think it makes sense. But I was thinking about it in terms of addiction, but in a little bit of a different way. I was thinking about how what you see in terms of your body is a very transient thing. Like every 4 months, all of it is new and different. So the transience of it made me think about like all the things we hear in nutrition to be and believe to be true as clinicians, certainly, like you are what you eat, and if you eat healthy, you will be healthy or healthier, and you will look healthier, and that should be true. And I actually think it's profoundly true. Like the most elite athletes, when they're training for a performance that they're going to have and they're trying to peak, it is very common not to cheat at all. Like you don't have dessert just because you trained 3 times today and burned 10,000 calories. So of course, calorically you could handle it. You still don't have dessert because you don't want it to change the metabolic pathways and the perfection that everything is perfectly tuned in. Mm. And I realized that's what it is. Like if you want to be a person who lives at that level, you have to actually behave at that level. And it's very transient. So if you're someone who's been struggling with being honest with yourself and you committed to a time of honesty, for as long as you're honest, you will be functioning better. For as long as you're nutritionally eating different, you will be better, different. But as soon as you revert back, so let's say you ate better and you did all these things that were healthy and it was a big change for you, and you lost 100 pounds. And now to celebrate the loss of 100 pounds, you kind of revert back to being the way you were. As soon as you revert back, you're already there. Just because you haven't gained it yet, you will. It's because the weight is a consequence of how you actually engage with the world. It's not some weird thing that I lost it, now I'm good. Now I could like cheat my way and go back to this unhealthy lifestyle. Like you will reflect your lifestyle in a very like transient way. Like you can't cheat it. You can't say, I'm going to brush my teeth for the first 30 years of my life, really, really good, and I think I could coast for the next 30. That's not going to work, right? Like, doesn't matter. But I was such a good brusher before. How could I have cavities and need all these procedures? Doesn't work that way. And so, like, that's the same with like recovery and like and trying to break out of addictive habits. It's like you know we always talk about it. So it's a lifestyle change, but it's like that's a big thing to say, because most of us who are not addicted have a hard time with lifestyle change.
Yes, thank you. I think it's a very a key point, right? So if I bring in some neurophysiology, if you don't mind, just to kind of help back up some of what you're saying. I think you're exactly right. I think the oldest, I'm pretty sure that's it, that the red blood cells last the longest. I know that the primary neurons in the brain don't increase in number; they only decrease over time. I don't know if they replenish, but what is true and what is very clear is there's interneuronal connections. So that's where the plasticity in the brain, for example, if you're learning something new, and physiologists or neurophysiologists get excited about something called LTP. This is the new sexy theory of memory.
It was sexy 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like, there other types of potentiation that dribble along the dendritic?
Yes, the dendritic connections. Exactly. So there's this new thing of, well, thinking of it like this is that, the old way was thinking, oh, I've only got so many brain cells, and well, if I drink, it's only the weak ones that are going to get lost, But what actually is going on is if you're learning something new, you're creating a new pathway in the brain, and the brain is a high-efficiency device. So it will try to reinforce something that you're starting to do. So, like we said, if you want to change your behavior, if you can't solve a problem with the same mindset that created the problem, you have to think differently, right? And so you go to the bathroom, you walk through those doors, and something clicks. Why does it happen so fast? Because you've done it so many times. The brain has made it very efficient. The moment you walk through that door, boom, you want to pee. But you don't want to pee here. You want to walk through that door, it's going to happen instantly. So say you want to think about something different. If you want to change the way you look at the world, the way you want to approach your diet, you want to approach your recovery, and in your therapy you've kind of changed it. Now what you have to do is consciously force yourself to consciously change. You have to keep, you've got to keep consciously in the beginning, just like riding a bike, cognitively choose the new pattern. And then the brain is going to say, oh, this is important. You know, just like you're trying to memorize something, you have to remember it 5 times and then it sticks, right? It's the repetitive firing of the same pathway. Just this is the same thing what transcranial magnetic stimulation does. They stimulate the part of the brain to help your depression, and they go on the exact same point over and over and over 30 times. As it repeats the pattern, more glial cells will come, and they'll create more interconnections, and they'll make that pathway faster and faster. So next time you come up to this stumbling block in your recovery, if you go, with a new pattern, eventually you're going to start to realize that's the pattern we're going to be dealing with, and you'll cross to the 51%, and then you're on the winning side. If you haven't crossed the 51%, and you do what Dr. Ratush said, that patient who then does the old habit one more time, it's kind of reactivating the old pathways all over again and pulling you all the way back again. So you really have to consciously fight this in the beginning, and then it'll become easier as your brain thinks it's just the new way we do this.
Love it. I love it.
Does that become more difficult for someone that is struggling, maybe with mental illness, and maybe they want to no longer abuse alcohol, for example? How would that, because maybe their entire life or their upbringing has been surrounded by alcohol, so it hasn't had any. The brain is used to, oh, this is what we do when we socialize. We have a cocktail. How does someone that wants to eliminate alcohol, have a better, healthier lifestyle, force themselves to not drink when they're in that same social environment?
Brilliant question. This is a really, really important.
There's several layers too. Like I like this. Thank you so much, Antoinette. There was a mental health and substance use question, right? And that's a powerful question, right? Because unfortunately, like when you think about the people that are homeless and on the street, they're always a combination of substance use and mental health challenges. And so you see what happens in the extreme case of that combination. It's severe poverty and profound isolation from humanity. So it's a devastating combination. And there's a spectrum, but in my experience, and Alex, you tell me about yours, in my experience treating people with a substance use disorder, a co-occurring psychiatric condition and its severity strongly determines whether or not someone will have continuous relapses in their life or if they will have a relative stability. And what I mean is someone could have major depressive disorder or bipolar disorder or even schizophrenia. But if their medication and behavioral interventions keeping them stable, and if they have a support system of human beings and maybe some animals that help them stay stable, then they are not at risk of relapse. In fact, I find them to be a very stable patient population in recovery. But when their psychiatric symptoms are not properly addressed and they're not feeling okay psychiatrically, then relapse already happened. That's my take. So you tell me. And then there was another question, but I got so caught up because on the first part because I really wanted to touch it because the second part it had us at a bar and saying no, and it took us into a whole environment. So I just wanted to touch on that because I'll get us back to where we started because the neurobiology part, and how do you will yourself into the right momentum stream, if you will. Uh, uh, People assume that if bad things happen to you, that's the rock bottom, and it doesn't seem to be the case. And I wanted to touch on that on a clinical end, but Alex, what do you think about what I said about what Antoinette asked?
Yeah, well, a couple, I hope this will help. One thing that might help Antoinette in those cases is to realize that you are now changing the entire chemistry of what your body is in. So your balance was here with the alcohol or the drug, and now you're here, which is suddenly sober, but the body has been used to doing everything here, right? So it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And this process takes like 6 months to get back your endocrine system, your nervous system, your digestive system. Every system has to get used to a new chemical environment. And it's really frustrating at times. You might lose it because you'll be like, what the F? I used to do so much better when I was drinking, and now I can't even find my darn keys. you know? It's because this is going to take a while, but it will get there. So the physiological principle is of equilibrium. So say you use alcohol, it's a down signal, but it also gives you pleasure, which gives you dopamine, right? So when you're drinking, you're introducing this, but the body wants to be in equilibrium, so it's going to upregulate glutamate receptors to try to pull this signal back to the middle, and it's going to downregulate your dopamine because you're getting too much pleasure signal because you want to be back at equilibrium. Now suddenly you stop, and now everything is, any little thing that makes you anxious, you've got an army of excitatory input to get you anxious, but you have got nothing down to counteract it, so you're going to be very irritable, very edgy right away, and everything is going to be boring as hell because you've got that dopamine that's been downregulated. The good news is now body realizes it's the opposite of what it was, and it's going to start upregulating the dopamine and downregulating the glutamate. And over 6 months, you're going to end up back at this point. But right now, you're here, and you got to understand this is going to be frustrating, and you're going to be worse before you get better. And so this is I don't know if that answers some of that question, but if knowing this kind of thing to expect this ahead of time can sometimes help so that you don't fall back into relapse. You kind of pull through the hard part of it. I don't know. Does that help at all, Ed?
That's very helpful. Yes, and that makes complete sense. And then
Okay.
I think understanding that it will get, harder because you're trying something new and your body's not used to it. So that makes complete sense. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I don't think I answered your question at all, though, Ed. Did I?
No.
Well, no, I guess that was fine. I just assumed you agreed. But this is, I guess, something that I guess could be useful to parents. The severity of a bad event, like, hey, my kid needed Narcan. I came home and I can't believe I actually went through with it. Well, my friends told me to get a kit, but they told me to, and I did. So I had one, and my kid was on the floor, so I took it out. I used it. I can't believe now I told them I couldn't believe it. I think they finally they got to be terrified now because they saw how terrified I was. This got to be the rock bottom. Doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. It's not that it isn't. It's not that I'm denying their sincerity. They're all being super sincere. Everyone is sincere. Everybody believes how they feel. But that's the problem. You're in no position to believe your feelings. Not as a patient, and not even as a parent of a patient. Your feelings are not helpful in that regard. As something you believe in. You could trust statistical kind of likelihoods. You could do that. You could be aware of them at least, but you can't necessarily trust your feelings. And
yeah,
I think that's a big mistake people make, and then they get devastated when they find their kid using again. thinking, well, that wasn't supposed to happen
Right.
because, like, didn't we had this horrible thing happen? How could this happen after this horrible thing happened?
I know.
But it
I know.
doesn't work that
And
way.
you're like restaurant. Yeah, exactly. I think you brought up so many points. I want to go back to 2 points that I'm going to tie back here. One thing you said about mental illness and substance abuse, double whammy type of thing. It's it's sometimes the first time you'll find out that you have a mental illness is when you've had a substance abuse problem, because it kind of catches everyone's attention because it's such a strong pull in the chemical direction, and then you realize what you're self-medicating for, like we've talked over and over. But the drug is the solution that the person came up with to deal with their problem, right? But the mental illness usually precedes it, but it's usually the thing that you find out only later after it. But if you do you have a huge mountain to climb, and you got both of them, right? And you've got significant. I think I think the idea of rock bottom, is a concept that everyone has their own feel for what that means, and it's hard to come up with a really good, concise definition for everyone. But I think it's simply, for me and my experience that I've seen, I'll just put that out there, is it's kind of like when life humbles you and you really realize you don't know what to do and you cannot conquer this on your own. Everything you've tried isn't working, you're just failing, and something serious is going to happen if you don't do something different right now. And whether it's you're going to die of cirrhosis, or something serious, you're going to cough up blood because you've been retching, or something serious can wake you up, or it can be something very minor. It could be like, oh my God, I cannot handle this. I'm a
Terrifying,
mess. I
dude.
need help.
You're terrifying me right now. It's a
Yeah.
honest no, because no. I'll tell you why. Because like you're reminding me about what I hate. I think the most about our medical
Mm.
system, and that's we only think of intervening when something is overtly broken.
Yes.
Like, shit, we're
Yes.
gonna stop drinking when we got cirrhosis?
Yeah. Right.
Really? That's when we stop drinking? When our end
So.
organs are falling off our bodies?
Yeah. Absolutely. We
That's
shouldn't have
not
to wait
that's
this
not
long.
the
That's
right
not.
time to do it,
No.
right?
Mm.
Where's
Absolutely.
the preventive medicine model for substance use disorders, right? Where's that? Because like there's so much else that is going to be lost
Mm.
in a person, like a person who ends up with cirrhosis. If they're, uh, uh, to in a very crude division, like if it's a male who started typically drinking in their 20s, uh, like they lose a lot of things in their 20s because of that. They lose a lot of things in their 30s because of that. So by the time they get cirrhosis in their 40s and 50s,
Mm.
like they've had losses way before that. The
Yes.
common trajectory for women, it's like more like 30s, and then within 5 years, they're like very, very brittle. The classic case is a woman at 35, never really having an alcohol problem, drinks because she realizes it helps with the stress of working a job and managing the home. And 3 years in, she does a bottle and a half a day, and thinks that's just what she needs. And then something happens, and she's in an accident, and she ends up in treatment. And that's how like she finds out that she has a problem. She didn't realize she had a problem. She didn't realize she had another psychological problem, maybe some trauma that had to do with
Yes.
family that makes it difficult for her to engage with her family, right? And instead of managing the trauma, she's been drinking as a mother, driving the kids that way around, being a good
Right.
mother, driving them to activities. You know, that's a continent. That's the soccer mom story, right? Like that's what it is. But like that person also had, losses all along the way. It's just it's a shorter trajectory.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Absolutely. And the subtlety of it. If we could have caught this earlier, right? I think one of the clues that people should learn is that, well, you know how we talk about this sort of addictive personality, right? A lot of people talk about this. Well, I have an addictive personality. I think important to know that addiction can be a lot of different things. You have sex addiction, food addiction. You know, our caller here, or someone online, is saying the same thing can be said about somebody who's a diabetic who's addicted to sugar. You know, um, it's interesting. You know, the reward system in the brain is working the same way. Whether it's a sugar high that's rewarding, whether it's masturbation leads to an orgasm, that's a very powerful addiction because you have very little consequence. Whether it's shopping, whether it's just working extra because you need the validation, or whatever other things that can, you know, eating. There's so many levels of this. The wiring is the same because you're getting more pleasure or more benefit. You're getting this temporary relief and temporary pleasure, but it becomes something you begin to crave, and then you begin to really want to do it even when negative things happen in your life, and that's addiction. So if you can see that if you're starting to have any pattern in any of those spheres in that way, that should be like giving you alarm bells. I'm still doing stuff that I know it's not good, but I want to do it anyway. And it could be early. It doesn't have to be when finally your body's breaking down. If you learn that that's a warning sign, that could be, I don't know, that could save people from having to go down this path even further, you know? I don't know.
I've had a friend actually say to me, I don't know why I keep doing the same thing that is killing me.
There you go.
And what advice do you give someone that says that? I mean,
yeah. Well, they're
intelligent, but yet they're.
Yeah. Well, you could say to them, well, like I said earlier, like
before you answer, Dr. Welge, let's clarify that as trained therapists, the one thing we don't do is give people advice, because not only because that's not what we do as therapists, but it's also very known fact that advice is never followed. So it would be like a futile thing to even try to do. That's not how people make decisions, and that's not how people do what they end up doing. So you could try to persuade someone to see a perspective that might have an influence in their decision, whatever that might be, but that's that's the art of something. That's magic. Call it therapy, call it whatever, but
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wow, I personally think this journey that we're going on right now is going to help people to get some basic things clarified. In your case, you're asking, how do you tell somebody who keeps trying the same thing and it comes back and they know it's not going to be good for them, but they keep doing it anyway, right? That what we call insanity, some people say, right?
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. But the thing is, you're only responsible for the level of consciousness where you're at. So, like we said, if you don't see that there's another way to do this, you can't take the full blame yet. Once you start seeing the problem from a different mindset and you realize there's a higher way, a better way to deal with this, you can maybe forgive yourself for what level of consciousness you were at, and maybe then if you still go back to it, perhaps then you could be mad at yourself. But it's kind of tricky because, like we talked before, there's a sort of narrative, a story of who we are, but we're also the consciousness aware of the story. But when the story is filled with isolation, loneliness, and pain, and neglect, and abuse, and you want to escape that story, and you want to bond with the chemical that's going to make you feel connected to something when you're alone, you're still the consciousness aware of that chemistry. That's a different part of you. Again, it's also separated, right? So you're choosing a solution to the narrative, but you're also the consciousness that is aware of both of these states of mind. And when you finally get to the point where you start to value your light, your love, you will start to protect it because you feel good being that person, and you won't even let even a chemical that temporarily gave you relief from the narrative, you won't allow that to pollute your consciousness because you want to have a pure connection to others, a pure connection to love, a pure connection to yourself, or a pure connection to something bigger than yourself. So that evolution takes a while, but you can't tell the person initially, you're going to be feeling great when you're here
Yeah.
because life sucks right now, you know? So it's kind of hard to break that up, but it's maybe the thing. The way you could answer it is tell them, well, I know you can, maybe the solution isn't the same way you're attacking the problem. Maybe you've got to find a different way of looking at this problem or dealing with this problem, and you'll find a different path. But
So,
it's
so, so
too vague, you know.
at the
That's
risk
good.
of getting back on the neuroscience conversation, because it has to do with perspective. You know, if I told you you're going to be in 45-degree cold water in the middle of the night, struggling for breath, 25 feet underwater, it would sound terrifying to you, and there's no way you'd want to do it right now. And if I told you jump in the pool and do it, you probably couldn't imagine any worse torture.
Right.
But if I told you that you are now a Navy SEAL on your last exercise before you actually get awarded to be a Navy SEAL, then you're motivated as fuck to jump into that icy water and get this over with. All right, I'll stay here as long as you want to try to undo this thing that I know I'll not undo until I pass out, and then you guys ultimately pull me out, because that's the freaking exercise ultimately.
Wow.
A lot of the times, sooner or later, at one of the points, you have to be committed to the project and trust that that's more important than whether or not you should panic about your air. Because panicking about your air will definitely get you less value out of the air you have than not panicking about your air. So,
That's a great point.
Yeah, that is good.
how do you train someone to do that? You got to go to the end. And so, in a way, they take guys to the end and gals. And you know, but you would have a completely different mindset about that experience. You got it right away when I switched the perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing: it's not about the perspective outside, whether it's you or you're a Navy SEAL. No, the perspective is actually inside. What you're switching is neural pathways, and the neural pathways that you're switching is I want to do this voluntarily, and you're dragging me through this, and I'd rather not do it. That's the switch. What makes something really difficult when in recovery, when I'm working with someone and they're telling me about all the challenges that they're having with XYZ, they're only telling me how ambivalent they are about this decision. Because if they actually knew that on the other side of their new sobriety is more arrests, more disease, more violence, more financial loss, more family pain, then why would they ever go there? Right? So it's like it's anything you choose voluntarily is much easier to do than things that feel you're doing involuntarily.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. You made a decision. You're going to try this path. I think that's excellent. Another important point there was trust, right? Like you're so trusting that this is also going to work out. But you're also maybe in recovery, you're trusting a good human being who just took the time to sit next to you while you were strung out on crack cocaine and said, "Hey, you know what? I know you're suffering, buddy, and I don't know what you're going through, but I do know someone who could help." You know, and it's a trust in humanity. It's a trust in the compassion of other people who actually care, who look like they've got good vibes. They're coming to you honest. They're coming to you real. They're coming to you and they're saying, I can help you, and I'm willing to help you as another human being. It's that isolation that oftentimes leads us to this lonely place where we then end up bonding with the drug. But when we have a chance to bond with another human being in a profound way, and we're wanting to be understood and connected in a profound way to each other, and someone makes that jump towards us, that may be the moment that you take that chance and that trust.
You just reminded me of a very dangerous kind of thing that's out there that it's in and of itself. Either one isn't super dangerous on its own, but combined is dangerous. But Antoinette, I was wondering if you had thoughts or comments or hearing.
I feel like I'm just learning so much. I wish I had my pad and pencil right here to take notes.
But the nice thing is you can play back the video, right? So you got it. You don't have to take any
Definitely.
notes. Yeah, this will be uploaded. It'll be everywhere, hopefully.
But
Definitely.
I went off on a tangent thinking about the connection and the fact that so many young people use technology to connect with each other. Like in a genuine way, I can't really criticize people, connecting via technology. Look, we're connecting now via technology. This feels genuine. This doesn't feel like we're cheating ourselves necessarily. This seems like, wow, what a great opportunity that we could be so far away and still have this level of connectivity and this level of ability to share with others. Like, so it's not like technology gives us a weird heebie-jeebie feeling that this is bad,
Right,
right?
right.
So young people using technology and committing themselves to technology, in my estimation, doesn't have to be seen as bad. Even things like, you know, Rite Aid and things like that, not necessarily bad. Um, so, um, but when you combine video games as a place where people socialize, and then you combine stimulants because they want to
Mm,
stay up all night socializing with their friends all over the world that are in different time zones. Like, I'm not saying it's sinister. It's like, let's say there's like a genuine thing. Oh man, my best friend only gets on when I'm like almost getting off, and if just like could stay on a couple more hours, right? And so they end up playing sometimes for over 24 hours. Some people much longer even than that. Uh, People think it's so cute and funny that there's furniture designers that design video game console chairs that have places to urinate within the chair
Oh, know that. Oh my goodness.
so that they don't have to stop the game.
Didn't know it had gotten that serious.
It's that serious, right? But now,
Wow.
what I'm doing is adding this complexity to this, and
mm,
I'm saying that, hey, this is where they socialize. This is where they get connectivity. And now we have this way of connecting, like, hey, look, it's like someone who says, I drink to socialize. And let's say it's a person with, to tie in your question about mental health and mental well being, a person with severe anxiety disorder is alone
mm.
unless they drink a lot of times in their mind so they could socialize.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead, you tell them that alcohol is bad for them. Is it though? Is it bad for them? It's not.
Mm.
It's good for them.
Well, this is the thing. The key point is that they have a profound need to connect. And you brought this up last time where people, it's a basic human need to connect to other human beings, just like shelter, water, food, and connecting to others, right? And technology has taken advantage of that need for connectivity and this disparate world where we're all over the place to give us a way to keep connected, right? In this way. It's amazing. I mean, this is an amazing form right here. We're able to do this. But does it ever really completely replace that connection? It's not possible to completely do it, but it's a good connection. It gives you a feedback. You feel good. You feel connected to some level, right? Maybe not the profound level that you would get on a soul-to-soul level,
Well,
maybe in
well,
person.
this is I think exactly what is happening. What you just said right there, right? So it's a different style of connectivity, right? Rather than single point of entry and deep, where in the most spiritual sense, you know, the two become one, right? And you layer it instead in this leveling Kierkegaardian sort of way, where you're spreading it. Like, I have 1 million followers. Well, what's my connection with any one of those people? Like, I have some connectivity with them. They know me enough to follow me, right? I care enough about them to know that they're a number in my follower account. Well, they're 1 in a million people that follow me. Of course, I care about every one of them, right? So I am allocating a certain amount of genuine sentiment towards them because I care that I have 1 million followers. It's not like I don't care. Of course I care. It means a lot to me that 1 million people care about what I have to say on this platform in the most genuine sense of the word, right? Like 100%, right? That would be my sentiment. If I had 1 million followers right now, I would say that. But how much of a relationship can I have with any one of these potential connections? It has to be more superficial than the alternative, which is in real life. And superficial over many, it's its own super strong signal. It's just a very different signal. It's a different texture. To me, I visualize it. One seems like it's a penetrating one. The other one seems like it's like a surface. Like, and I don't want it to give like a negative connotation, because like the surface area of a sphere is a large amount. It's like it covers the whole thing. So surface is powerful, and it could cover and it could have like the magnitude, but it's not the same as the pinpoint thing that could pierce through a sphere, and create a diameter.
Let me there's a brilliant point. This thing that you're saying here, it's a superficial connection, but it's nonetheless rewarding, and it's tapping in on that need to connect. But for an anxious person like you described, this is something they can do, right? Because there's not a lot of emotional risk as much as it is in real person to person. This is a comfortable place where they can connect with some distance. And at the same time, now they're using the alcohol, say that same person uses alcohol because it allows them to be social and it really helps them. But that goes back to your original point, Antoinette. How do you solve a problem with the same mindset, right? You might want to ask that person if the pain that you're dealing with is the lack of ability to connect because you feel so awkward socially. We should be helping you with social skills development and helping you learn that. But this new mindset that comes into your mind when you're using alcohol is allowing you to overcome something, and you're attacking the problem with a different mindset, even though it may not be great using alcohol to attack it, but nonetheless it's a different mindset. So how about we examine that mindset while you're using and see how am I thinking differently about the same situation? What is it? Is it just the chemical itself? Do I actually feel, am I psychologically doing something different on a more profound level that I can maybe implement as a sober person and start moving towards that ultimately without having to need so it's a different approach in that sense, but you're not throwing the value of the drug that helped you overcome the barrier that you really need to treat. But in a way, using what you're using the drug for to help give you insight into what the wound is that you're ultimately trying to treat.
I have a topic for next week. You gave me one. You gave me a topic for next week just now, just like with that comment.
I was wondering, Dr. Ratush, you brought up early in the conversation about the red blood cells and how they change and how you are like a different person every so many months, every 4 months. For someone that's trying, going back to Dr. Welge's point, for someone that's trying to get into a different mindset, should they have different goals? Maybe quarterly or just, to a different focus, because after 3 months, what I'm trying to focus on may not be interesting, or it may not relate at that time. And what am I going to do to help me stay on this healthy path if this focus is no longer attractive?
Yeah, so I think I understand where you're coming from. I think the best way to use that, like that 120-day red blood cell life value, is to use it to help you commit to things for no less than 120 days.
Mm.
You know, you want to say, hey, I want to get to a point where I could imagine that every single cell in my body only knew the healthy me. And 4 months from now, every cell in my body will only know the healthy me. So that's why people use it in theories and suggested scripts for habit changing. And they'll argue that, you know, you should do this new habit for 120 days before, you know, you make an opinion about it or whatever, you know. It works for meditation. You know, you want someone to commit, and it's a nice marker for how long you should commit, because, you know, after 4 months, every single cell is only known that new you. And again, like obviously the new cells get word from the older cells how to behave, which is why we're kind of the same, even though we're new, right? It's like, you know, right? So they word on the street, they get told what to do. But as you can imagine, the more you consistently behave in a new way, that becomes the more pronounced message that they're whispering to one another. So in that first 4 months, there's a lot of whispering of, yo, I know he's doing it this way, but remember the other way? The other way is there's still another good word. The other way, the other way, the other way. Right? You know? And then like, that's why I sometimes like wonder when people are put into places where they're kept safe and sober, how much energy are they spending with their mind intentionally bringing them back to the drug? Because they're being like almost overly soberized. You know, we think of like when you give Narcan to someone on opioids, you blast them biologically with this like stripping of the receptors. And, you know, in a way, you know, maybe sobriety does that too, psychologically. And maybe the defense for that is the person actually having a psychological resistance to the positive interventions, because it's too much. And so the topic for next week is, do we need abstinence? Is abstinence an important part of recovery at all? Not like, hey, should there be non-abstinence based treatments also, but more like, is abstinence getting in the way of more successful recovery plans?
That's an interesting question.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So
Can't wait.
well, hopefully you guys figure this out, because like I did the heavy lifting. I came up with the topic, you know. But no, let's think about that, and let's see what we can come up with, and we'll see if we remember the topic next week, and then we'll discuss it.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Addicted
I
kids,
like that.
concerned parents, Antoinette, Alex, Eddie.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you,
Ed.
Doctor.
Thanks, Antoinette. Bye.
Bye.